Part 10. My body was being occupied by Bai Xuelan that night. Xuan Huaifeng was suddenly pushed forward, from the bright study to the dimly lit bedroom. His vision suddenly blurred. He looked a little scared. The headlights in the room were not turned on, only a table lamp on the table was on, and the silk cloth lampshade was placed on the light bulb, covering most of the light and illuminating the objects in the room. This bedroom is huge. In fact, it can be regarded as a suite. First of all, it is a small side hall for meeting close friends. Once you enter it, it is a square bedroom, and the big bed is placed in the innermost. Xuan Huaifeng stood for a moment, and clearly saw that under the hazy yellow light, the baoluo tent was hanging on it, and the pure white tent was hanging down to the big bed below, and he couldn't help shuddering, thinking of what Bai Xuelan had already said very clearly. He was inexplicably panicked in his heart. Xuan Huaifeng didn't want to stay here for a moment. He turned around and slammed the door, shouting in a loud voice, "Let me out! Let me out! Open the door! Can't break it either!" He knew that there must be guards guarding outside, but he broke his voice and didn't respond at all. Xuan Huaifeng fought for a long time, and gradually realized that he couldn't get out. With a chill on his back, he turned back and looked at the big bedroom where he was the only one. This kind of thing would actually make him encounter. Xuan Huaifeng was afraid that he would lose his head with fear, so he clasped his hands in front of his chest, forcing himself to walk back and forth pretending to be calm. Unexpected. It turned out to be like this. There is no king's law. As if he has become a little bug in Bai Xuelan's hand. He doesn't want to be Bai Xuelan's little bug. He shouldn't come. Xuan Huaifeng was very remorseful, saying that he shouldn't come, no matter how desperate he was, he shouldn't come to beg him. From the first day he knew Bai Xuelan, he knew that Bai Xuelan was not a good thing. The first time they met, Bai Xuelan made him feel uncomfortable. His smile made him uncomfortable. The way he looked harmless made him uncomfortable, and the way he looked at people made him very uncomfortable. In the past, when talking and laughing with Lin Qijun, Bai Xuelan watched quietly, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Xuan Huaifeng felt that Bai Xuelan smiled quietly, staring at him as if he was looking at something that belonged to him. Bai Xuelan. It's like the eldest young master of a wealthy family who takes his fancy to a gold chain in a glass cabinet, or a delicate handkerchief. Xuan Huaifeng has always been vigilant. He always avoided Bai Xuelan intentionally or not, and asked his classmates to play at home, never bringing Bai Xuelan with him. He also didn't understand that day. How did Bai Xuelan find the hotel where he was staying temporarily? He clearly only made an appointment with Qijun for a mountain tour and had a room by himself. Why would Bai Xuelan lie on the same bed with him in the morning? His head was still resting on Bai Xuelan's shoulder. That morning, when I opened my eyes, it was a living nightmare. Now, he fell into this nightmare again. His eyes touched the bed inside. Xuan Huaifeng shuddered. He stopped and looked away from the bed, as if to find something to protect himself. He felt that he was very useless, but Bai Xuelan was very powerful, he knew it. If I waited for Bai Xuelan to come in, what did he really do according to Bai Xuelan's wishes? What kind of face would he have? That's life rather than death. What's more, he already has Qijun. If Qijun found out, what would he do? Xuan Huaifeng's heart was cut like a knife, thinking of when he and Qijun kissed sweetly on the grass. If he betrayed Qijun, he would rather die. Bai Xuelan asked the guards to take Xuan Huaifeng to the bedroom. But he sat in the study without getting up in a hurry. He leaned his head on the back of the chair and thought on his back. After a while, he picked up the rattle and shook it, and told the servant to remove the tea and snacks and make himself a cup of strong black coffee. The matter of Xuan Huaifeng still needs to be considered calmly. The person has been locked in the room. Is it to scare him, or to cut off his retreat? Yi Chongmeng has a lot of dreams. First ask the person, and then slowly let him change his mind. For ordinary people, it may be feasible. Bai Xuelan was afraid that against Xuan Huaifeng, such a trick would be unsuccessful. If he really wanted him, Xuan Huaifeng's fierce temper might really seek death. Speaking of the fierceness of Xuan Huaifeng, Bai Xuelan smiled wryly and shook his head. He really loved it and hated it. The servant made hot coffee, and he took it up and sipped it slowly. After drinking a cup of coffee, Bai Xuelan finally made up his mind. Rather than force it and let Xuan Huaifeng search for life, it's better to give him some time and let him soften before doing what he thinks. So be it. Bai Xuelan turned his head and looked at the grand pendulum clock. The hour hand on it pointed to 12, which was very late. Xuan Huaifeng was locked in the bedroom for a few hours. And he must have been so frightened that he had lost his mind. Well, let's get rid of his prestige, it's time to meet him. Like a seasoned hunter, waiting patiently for the opportunity, Bai Xuelan stood up and walked to the door of the bedroom with a very interesting smile. 2 guards stood straight outside the door. Bai Xuelan pointed inside. Is there any trouble? The guard smiled and said, he's been knocking on the door for a long time, and he's been making noise. He's probably tired now. And he's stopped. Bai Xuelan had already guessed that this would be the case and motioned them to unlock the door. Walking in, the table lamp on the table was on. And there was no sound in the small hall. Bai Xuelan guessed that he was hiding somewhere. Anyway, he couldn't escape from this big place, so he was not in a hurry, and slowly paced to go in. When I got to the innermost side, I saw that the drapery on the bed had been put down, covering most of the bed, and there was a vague shadow in the white gauze. Like someone laying on the bed with their backs to the outside. Bai Xuelan was a little surprised but couldn't help but smile. Unexpectedly, this person is more open-minded than he thought. And dares to sleep here. Since that night I was drunk, I have never seen Xuan Huaifeng's sleeping face again. Thinking of his handsome face, which was slightly crimson when he was sleeping. With his head resting on his shoulders, like a soft flower hanging on a green branch, he could not bear it in his heart. It kept getting hot. Bai Xuelan's smile softened a lot. He gently opened the gauze, got in and sat on the edge of the bed, and asked in a low voice, pretend to be asleep? I don't believe you can sleep. If you don't get up again. Be careful that I take off your clothes. However, Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be really asleep, still lying still. Bai Xuelan suddenly became surprised and called out. Huaifeng? He reached out and grabbed his shoulder. With only a slight twist, the body lying on his side had no strength at all, and he turned over with his hands and lay on his back on the bed. Xuan Huaifeng's young and handsome face was white and blue, as if he had lost his breath. Huaifeng. Bai Xuelan originally locked him up to frighten him, but now he frightened himself, shouted. Hugged his unmoved body in his arms, and shouted to the outside, come on. Call someone. Find a doctor. The guards outside didn't know what was going on. They pressed the gun case on their waist and rushed in like a fly, seeing Xuan Huaifeng motionless in Bai Xuelan's arms, stunned. One of them said, Chief. We don't know what's going on inside the house. The other was a little older and cleverer. He hurriedly bent down and put his hand on Xuan Huaifeng's nose, and even said, there is still breath. Looking like this, it should be something to eat. Bai Xuelan's face turned blue. He shouted at him, what did you eat? Tell me. After a while, several of the servants outside rushed in. Once they came in, everything in the room was clear at a glance. Everyone knew that the young master of the Xuan family wanted to die. Now, many of them have been running errands in the official residence for many years, and they do things fairly well, and immediately someone rushed to call the doctor. There was a man named Zhang Rong who was more experienced. Seeing that Bai Xuelan was just holding Xuan Huaifeng and desperately stroking his forehead and cheeks, he said to him, "Chief, you are too anxious to hold it like this. I see ordinary people. There is no poison on his body, he probably ate something in the room. Do you think there is something poisonous in the room? Let him turn it out and eat it?" Bai Xuelan was concerned and confused, and when he reminded him, he woke up, frowned and said, "No, why am I putting poison in the bedroom?" Suddenly, his eyes opened, and his body shook. The customs sent some samples of tobacco soil a few days ago, wrapped in oil paper. Now, it's probably in the drawer. Hurry up and look for it. His hand pointed directly at the table. Several servants hurried to turn it over, but they didn't turn it over. Then, everyone bent down to the ground beside the bed to search in a panic, and really let them find a piece of oil paper under the bed. Zhang Rong took the oil paper and smelled it on his nose. The smell of smoke and earth rushed into his nose. He said, "It seems that I drank the smoke in the water." Bai Xuelan heard this, and his heart relaxed a little, and he was not as anxious as before. He felt dizzy. If you say it's smoke, you can be saved. Immediately he regained his composure, and said to Zhang Rong, "Call quickly and tell the doctor that the patient has drunk smoked and soil water, so bring the right medicine." "No. We will send a car to pick it up. All the cars in the mansion will be sent out, and the nearby doctors will ask them to bring medicines. And whoever arrives soon will be rewarded." Several servants were sent to pick up the doctor. Holding Xuan Huaifeng in his arms, he sat beside the bed and waited anxiously. This wait seems to have been waiting for several lifetimes, like burning on a fire. In less than a minute or two, he stared at him and asked, "Why not yet? You are too anxious. The car has just left. And it will take 10 minutes at the earliest." Bai Xuelan put Xuan Huaifeng's head on his thigh and kept wiping away the sweat on his forehead. A little bit, it was cold. And soon there was no sweat to wipe off. Bai Xuelan only felt that Xuan Huaifeng's cheeks were getting greener, and even the breath seemed to be exhausted. The heart that was just a little at ease was suddenly suspended again, for fear of the doctor. Before he came, Xuan Huaifeng couldn't hold it anymore. "I can't wait to rush out to the street and drag a doctor in, but I don't dare to leave Xuan Huaifeng behind." That kind of terrifying torment was unprecedented in his life. Time passed little by little. In just 10 minutes, Bai Xuelan felt as if he had died 10 times. Suddenly, he heard the servants outside shouting, "The doctor is here." He was arrested in the middle of the night, with no clothes on. The dressed Western doctor trotted in with a small medicine box, sweating profusely. Bai Xuelan also thought that he was slow, and repeatedly said, "Hurry up. Hurry up. It's time. It's still dawdling." The Western doctor had heard that he had drunk smoked soil water on the road. And this patient was not difficult to treat. He hurried to the bed, untied Xuan Huaifeng's clothes, let him breathe, then grabbed Xuan Huaifeng's thin arm and put a needle in it. Xuan Huaifeng was actually only half dazed, and he still had a little consciousness. He was naturally afraid of pain, and when the needle pierced into the flesh, he couldn't help groaning softly. Bai Xuelan heard his moan and let out a breath of air as if he had also injected a life-saving medicine. The doctor gave Xuan Huaifeng 2 injections, took out the potion, asked Bai Xuelan to help him open his mouth, fed him 2 small bottles, and said with a smile, "Drink this potion, give him some water later, and vomit. Just come out." Bai Xuelan saw that he said it so easily, but he didn't believe it. "Is this all it takes?" The doctor said, "The patient's complexion is fine. At first glance, he can tell that the amount he has eaten is not large. Now the person is just paralyzed, and there is no serious problem." With a big yawn, he pleaded guilty to Bai Xuelan, saying he wanted to leave. However, Bai Xuelan was so frightened that he was afraid that Xuan Huaifeng's condition would change again. He said to the doctor, "Please stay tonight, at least until tomorrow morning. The consultation fee must be generously paid down." Xuan Huaifeng took the medicine and was fed a bowl of white water. Later, when he moved, he vomited. Bai Xuelan hugged him and vomited all over. But he didn't feel anything. After Xuan Huaifeng vomited cleanly, Bai Xuelan took water, filled Xuan Huaifeng with some water, and told him to rinse his mouth and look at the bedroom. He took him to another room. Xuan Huaifeng was still wearing the silk suit he had come from. At this time, there were many folds in his sleep. Because the doctor let him breathe. The suit and shirt were opened left and right, revealing most of his fair chest. Bai Xuelan went into the wing room, put him on the bed, and changed clothes by himself. And asked the servant to find a set of his own pajamas. He personally replaced Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng was still paralyzed, his hands and feet were soft, but he became a lot more obedient. Bai Xuelan moved his long white and slender hands and long legs like a life-size doll. Putting the pajamas on the patient, Bai Xuelan bowed his head. Only to see Xuan Huaifeng's eyes open with a small slit, the black pupils showing a little bit inside, as if not awake, with a very defenseless look on his face, staring blankly him. Bai Xuelan said with a wry smile, "You're pretty good, but you've repaired me." Xuan Huaifeng didn't seem to understand what he was talking about, so he still looked at him obediently. Bai Xuelan asked, "Are you confused now? Or are you awake?" Xuan Huaifeng still didn't move, leaned his head on the pillow, and leaned a little, quietly, staring at him in a daze. Bai Xuelan's ambition tonight had been dispelled, but at this moment, it suddenly burned like a wildfire. His expression changed, he untied his clothes as if he couldn't stand the heat. And couldn't help lowering his head to look at Xuan Huaifeng again. One look, another look. He sighed abruptly and took off all the clothes on his body. Standing in front of the bed, he paused. And finally seemed to make up his mind, and peeled off all the pajamas on Xuan Huaifeng, who was lying on the bed. "Lie down on the bed naked." Holding the naked Xuan Huaifeng in his arms with one hand. Then, with the other hand, he pulled the folded quilt on the head of the bed, shook it, and raised it so hard that the two of them were completely covered. The feeling at this moment is too mysterious to describe. The whole body was covered with a quilt. And Bai Xuelan didn't feel suffocated, but felt that the two of them were isolated in another world that was far away from the world. Xuan Huaifeng's soft body lay naked in his arms. He couldn't help but slowly move his hand, from the shoulder blade all the way to the back. Under the quilt, no light could penetrate, it was absolutely pitch black. Enjoying the beautiful lines of Xuan Huaifeng's body only by the touch made Bai Xuelan even more excited. In the small confined space, he seemed to smell the smoky aroma of meat in his brain like the smoke emanating from Xuan Huaifeng. For some reason, Bai Xuelan gradually became restless. He stroked the body of the person in his arms, as if he was deliberately trying to wake him up. His fingertips slid from his delicate back to the narrow buttocks below, stubbornly digging in. Tight yet soft, the odd touch makes it hard to breathe. Bai Xuelan thought he was ready, but his heart was still pounding. He suddenly felt that there was not enough air, and he kicked irritably, pushing the quilt far away from him. The lights in the yard suddenly penetrated into the window, blurring his vision. He sat up from the bed and looked down at Xuan Huaifeng, who was sleeping on the side with his eyes closed. There was a faint halo around him. Bai Xuelan has always thought that Xuan Huaifeng is good-looking, but he has never felt so moving at this moment. Like a person made of pink glass. On the charmingly curved back waist, there is a birthmark in the shape of a butterfly, like a smudge of ink, covering the skin. Bai Xuelan came up with an impulse. Couldn't help lowering his head, and took a bite on the birthmark on the lower back. Xuan Huaifeng was bitten by him and sobered up immediately. He let out a painful woo. He wanted to turn over to avoid the pain in his lower back. Bai Xuelan was even more reluctant to let it go, biting the little flesh with his teeth like a wolf, kept deepening his teeth marks. Biting Xuan Huaifeng to the point of sobbing and struggling. After biting all the time, he turned Xuan Huaifeng over and let him lie on his back on the bed. Lying on the bed naked like this for the man to look at, Xuan Huaifeng felt humiliated, and desperately tried to turn over and curl up. Bai Xuelan and he were screwing, pressing him forcibly, not allowing him to move, and reaching out a hand to pick him up Xuan Huaifeng's chin. Xuan Huaifeng was forced to raise his face. Bai Xuelan could see his handsome face clearly through the moonlight slanting in from the window, and his delicate and flawless facial features were embarrassed with blood-sucking shame. And he couldn't resist if he wanted to. Perhaps Bai Xuelan really bit him in pain. Even tears leaked out. His closed eyelids were covered with thick eyelashes, wet and trembling. Bai Xuelan suddenly felt that he was really a scumbag. Tonight's incident, falling into the trap and taking advantage of the danger, these 8 character comments could not escape. It's rude and shameless. He scolded himself fiercely in his heart, but he couldn't retract his hand no matter what, sticking to Xuan Huaifeng's white chest, repeatedly stroking the 2 tender buds on it. Unexpectedly, the more I touched it, the more uncontrollable my lust became. It was like a thirsty person who suddenly drank salty soy sauce. The thirst became even more insane. I couldn't relieve my hatred when I touched it with my hands. I just pressed my head down and clenched my teeth. A nipple, with the tip of the tongue desperately pressing against the small fleshy spot. Xuan Huaifeng let out a soft, yeah, with a little cry-like ending, and pushed Bai Xuelan's head hard, trying to push him away from him, but when he realized it wouldn't work, he pushed up with his feet again. Bai Xuelan was kicked several times by him in a row, but it didn't hurt much. He stubbornly leaned on him and couldn't get down. He had small milk beads in his mouth, and his cheeks were tucked away. Inhale hard. Ah! Xuan Huaifeng couldn't take it anymore. He tilted his neck back and panted, "You kill me." This line of dialogue is often used in novels when robbing civilian women. Anyone who spit out this sentence on the bed, Bai Xuelan thought it was very ridiculous. Only Xuan Huaifeng said softly. With an air of despair, he suddenly pulled back most of Bai Xuelan's wild horse's unbridled desire, raised his head, twisted his chin and turned back, face to face, and said coldly, "This is ridiculous. You have always wanted to kill yourself. You don't want this body yourself, so why don't you allow me to touch it? The leftover food in the people's homes is given to beggars. You treat me, even right. Even beggars are better." Xuan Huaifeng refused to speak to him, turned his face away, and wanted to roll over again. Bai Xuelan hugged him, trapped him in his arms, and said forcefully, "Okay, you don't want to talk to me, let's do it to the end. I've already given up anyway, so I don't need to care about my face. No matter whether you are a rogue or a rapist. In short, I will not let you go." After speaking, he pressed Xuan Huaifeng's lips and kissed him hard, forcing Xuan Huaifeng to run out of air in his lungs. He kept spinning around in his arms. After the kiss was over, Bai Xuelan let go of Xuan Huaifeng, grabbed his chin, and asked with a fierce look in his eyes, "Did you and Lin Qijun also kiss like this?" Xuan Huaifeng stubbornly didn't say a word, and kept turning his head and body, trying to keep his eyes out of sight. On Xuan Huaifeng's body, he put his hand under his waist and belly. Once he grasped the key point, "Is it comfortable for him to help you get here?" Bai Xuelan bit on the shoulder. Bai Xuelan avoided his side and said with a sneer, "You only have the surname Lin in your heart. If you want to bite me, you will bite. How come you never thought that I would also hurt?" He lowered his head and kissed Xuan Huaifeng's lips. The tongue sticks in, and the wind swirls the mouth like leaves. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't even catch his breath. His strength was running out, his face turned blue from suffocation. Bai Xuelan only let go of his lips after kissing enough. As if he didn't give himself room to think, he couldn't let Xuan Huaifeng breathe, and he held Xuan Huaifeng with both hands, Xuan Huaifeng knees, 1 point left and right, and takes advantage of the situation to wedge his body between his legs. The throbbing hot thing pressed hard against the entrance. Xuan Huaifeng trembled in fear, and whispered, "I don't want to." Before he could finish speaking, there was a tingling pain in his lower body, and a foreign object was directly embedded in it. Immediately, my mind was in a trance. Bai Xuelan went in a little further, and Xuan Huaifeng just woke up, screaming, "Ah!" and kept kicking his feet in the air. Bai Xuelan got what he wanted and was suddenly forced to be irrational by the warm and soft, sucking touch of his crotch. It's not that he hasn't slept with anyone before. And he has nothing new to say about that secret place. In order to forget Xuan Huaifeng, he deliberately found 2 same-sex lovers when he was in France. But now he fully understands, everything is futile. He just wanted this guy. $1,000 is hard to buy a good heart, and it is almost impossible. Only Xuan Huaifeng could easily set him on fire. The thrill of the hot air made Bai Xuelan just want to hold down Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng's feet kicked in mid-air. He simply grabbed the kicked ankles with both hands and pulled to the left and right, dividing Xuan Huaifeng's thighs even more open. In this way, it is easier to enter the secret place of the buttocks. Painful excitement, trying to squeeze deep into the tight hot road, very quiet night. As if I could hear the sound of running over the flesh membrane when squeezing deep, making my teeth a little sore. But it also drives people crazy like a beast. He grabbed his 2 white jade-like ankles and penetrated the center of his buttocks. The joy of possession filled his heart. As if a treasure that had been coveted for many years was finally held in the palm of his hand. Push the waist bar hard. The moment the murder weapon was completely put into the beautiful body, Xuan Huaifeng, who had been rolling around, suddenly cried out loudly, and covered his face with 10 fingers in pain. Bai Xuelan grabbed the hand that was blocking his face and did not allow him to escape. He lowered his head and bit his lips and kissed him. "Qi Jun," Xuan Huaifeng cried loudly, shaking his sweaty head desperately. Qijun's smiling face, which he was trying to recall in his mind, was shattered by Bai Xuelan's sudden aggravating action. No matter how hard he tried to escape, he couldn't help but feel that he was being occupied by Bai Xuelan, and the secret place was expanded to the extreme. The pain of shame spread along the blood vessels to the whole body. Rubbing the flesh into the water-stained glutinous sound, drilled straight into the ear canal. On the bare spine, waves of electric current scurried. The breath was completely disordered, panting, and even crying intermittently. He felt Bai Xuelan twitching his sturdy waist repeatedly, pounding fiercely and deeply in his body. His whole body trembled inexplicably. Xuan Huaifeng had never experienced something exciting in his body. He thought it was hatred for Bai Xuelan. When Bai Xuelan moved while holding his bottom, he realized that his crotch was straight. "Would you like to let Qijun come to see this? It's hard to be hugged by me." Xuan Huaifeng took a deep breath and widened his eyes. The place actually straightened up happily, as if expectantly beating in Bai Xuelan's palm. Xuan Huaifeng's heart throbbed violently. He bit his lower lip, and large drops of tears flowed out of the corners of his eyes, one by one falling down his face onto the sheets. Bai Xuelan couldn't bear to see it, wanted to stop, suddenly changed his mind, and deliberately made him cry in such a desperate and silent manner, but his actions were even more ruthless. The frequency of hitting the inside was getting faster and faster, and Xuan Huaifeng didn't feel any pain. He pressed the back of his head against the sheets, and his body tried to arch back and trembled, only the tears fell even more. After tossing for an unknown amount of time, Bai Xuelan's waist rod, which had been twitching so much, suddenly stopped for a while, and the next moment, it slammed into the innermost part, and exploded at the peak of joy. The hot essence splashed inside, like being scalded by boiling water. Xuan Huaifeng suddenly whimpered like a cat that was stepped on. Bai Xuelan let out his lust, let out a big sigh of relief, and fell down. Staring at the expressionless Xuan Huaifeng for a long time, he asked in a low voice, "Let's do it again?" Bai Xuelan stroked his underside gently and said softly, "You haven't had a good time. Didn't you just get hard? I'll help you get it out." In order to plead, his lips trembled for a long time, and he whispered in a low voice, "You have already succeeded. Are you still willing to let me go?" Bai Xuelan felt a tingling pain in his heart. He was about to say two vicious words to be mean to him and Lin Qijun, but the words were on the tip of his tongue. But he swallowed them patiently, and only said, "Yes, I succeeded. In your heart, Bai Xuelan is a robber and a rogue." Xuan Huaifeng's eyes were like two gems with water in them, staring at the ceiling in a daze, without making a sound. Quiet in the house. Bai Xuelan waited for a while, sighed, gritted his teeth fiercely, and sneered like a wolf, "Okay. I'll be a robber and a rogue." Turning over and lying on the bed, he pulled the quilt to cover it, and spoke with Xuan Huaifeng, sleeping side by side, saying that he got what he wanted. Bai Xuelan's unspeakable unpleasant feeling surged. The happiness just now seemed to fly away, and the bamboo basket was empty. He staring at the ceiling like an enemy. "You!" After a while, Bai Xuelan kicked Xuan Huaifeng next to him with his right foot and ordered him to say, "Come here and put your head on my shoulder." Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be unconscious and motionless. Bai Xuelan said coldly, "You already know my person today. You should know that I am rude and savage. There is a saying that a scholar meets a soldier, and it is not reasonable to say. Not to mention that you meet a robber and gangster? I am excited. Come on, if you don't obey me, I'll tie you with a rope and force you to play for 2 or 3 more times. At that time, don't blame me for being short-tempered." He snorted coldly. Xuan Huaifeng was beside him, like turning into a stone. Bai Xuelan waited for a while, but there was still no response. "Thinking that you are really determined to fight against me." Just as he was about to turn around and grab him, Xuan Huaifeng, who was beside him, turned over and put his head on his shoulder stiffly. This posture is really awkward. His body is upright, but he is trembling for a while, obviously terrified that Bai Xuelan really tied him up and forced him to do that violent bed thing. Bai Xuelan sighed inwardly, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of victory. He sat up from the bed and reached out to hug Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng shrank into the quilt in fear. Bai Xuelan insisted on taking him out of the quilt, and whispered, "Don't move, I have no other thoughts. You have to wash your body before you can sleep." Xiao Xie was shocked. Driving back to Nian's house, he really didn't dare to talk nonsense. According to Bai Xuelan's explanation, he said to Zhang Ma, "Master Huaifeng is very good. Chief Pai kept him here." He went back to his room. Zhang Ma trusts Bai Xuelan very much. As soon as she hears that the young master is very good, she is naturally not worried. Because it was getting late, Xuan Dian was pregnant and easily tired, and she fell asleep after eating. Zhang Ma was afraid that she would be disturbed to rest, so she didn't report again. That's how the night passed. Xuan Dian got up the next day, remembering that his younger brother went to Bai Xuelan's place, and asked Zhang Mama. Zhang Mama said, "Young master hasn't come back yet. Chief Pai asked him to stay here." Xuan Dian knew that Xuan Huaifeng had a prejudice against Bai Xuelan, and said suspiciously, "Can't you? My home is in the city. It's easy to travel by car. Why do you want to stay here? Besides, Huaifeng is not a child who likes to stay outside." Zhang Mama said, "Miss, you are too worried. Chief Pai is a good person, and I am afraid that he will not treat the young master well." "Is it? To say that the young master does not stay overnight, he has also lived in the guild hall for so long. And now he is an adult." Xuan Dian pondered for a while, and said to her, "I don't trust this matter very much." "Get it? I'll ask for it myself." It happened that Xiao Xie woke up in the morning and had not yet received a call from Nian Liangfu asking him to go to the small mansion. So he stayed in the small room where the attendant slept, and when he heard his madam was looking for it, he had to come over to listen her order. Xuan Dian got out of bed and was having breakfast. When she saw Xiao Xie coming, she asked him, "Yesterday you sent Huaifeng to Chief Pai. What did you say? Why did Huaifeng live there?" Xiao Xie saw Madam personally asked her questions. But he couldn't be fooled by Zhang Mama, so he had to repeat Bai Xuelan's words again. Xuan Dian asked, "Have you stopped at Chief Pai's place? Did Chief Pai say this, or Huaifeng? Did Huaifeng tell you how he and Chief Pai were talking?" Hesitantly. Seeing him like that, Xuan Dian suddenly became suspicious. After some further questioning, Xiao Xie couldn't bear it any longer, and said with a bitter face, "Madam, I didn't mean to hide it from you. I didn't dare to say it." Xuan Dian didn't expect things to change like this. Like being hit by a hammer on the forehead out of thin air, she swayed in an instant, slammed into the chair, and after a while, she raised her head and said to Xiao Xie, "Such a big thing. You." She wanted to scold Xiao Xie, but the scolding didn't help, but her brother's safety couldn't be delayed. "Prepare car. I'll go to the mansion immediately." Just as Zhang Mama brought tea, Xuan Dian briefly explained the matter and complained to Zhang Mama, "You are so stupid. You didn't come back after listening to Huaifeng last night. It's time to wake me up. If something happens to him, it won't help you even if you repent and break your bowels." These words shocked Zhang Mama. Xuan Dian didn't care how Zhang Mama was frightened and worried. So she changed her clothes in a hurry, got into the car, and went straight to Bai Xuelan's mansion. Xuan Huaifeng's body was getting thinner and thinner due to the recent attacks on the first and the second, and he could not die after drinking the smoked soil water. Instead, his body was taken over by Bai Xuelan. That night, his body began to heat up and he began to talk nonsense. This made Bai Xuelan nervous again. Fortunately, there was still the Western doctor who treated Xuan Huaifeng in the mansion, so Bai Xuelan immediately invited him over and gave Xuan Huaifeng 2 injections. "The Western medicine is a little strange. Although I drank the smoked soil water, I also got the needles and the medicine, and I should be fine after spitting it out. Why did I suddenly have a high fever in the middle of the night?" Bai Xuelan felt ashamed and called the servants to the door. Waiting outside, he said, "There's a place. I'm afraid I'll ask you to take care of it." After hesitating, he stepped forward to lift the quilt and let the doctor see Xuan Huaifeng's lower body. That Western doctor is also used to walking the door of the powerful, so he understood immediately. His expression showed some ambiguity, and he only said, "The chief is naturally very sincere towards the person he loves. But it seems that it is better to be gentle on the bed." Taking out the gold-rimmed glasses and clipping them to the bridge of his nose, he looked down very seriously and extended his fingertips to probe the edge. Xuan Huaifeng whimpered softly as if he was aware of the pain. "Some of them are hurt. I need to take some medicine to reduce inflammation. The doctor paused and whispered, "This gentleman, it seems that this is the first time, so he should have given him some time to adapt." Bai Xuelan always asked himself. His face was as thick as a city wall, but at this moment his face could not help but heat up, and he said in a deep voice, "What you said is true. Please heal quickly." Common medicines such as inflammation medicine and ointment were prepared in the medicine cabinet, and the doctor gave Xuan Huaifeng treatment. After such a toss, "The night is over." Bai Xuelan waited for the doctor to leave, helped Xuan Huaifeng put on his pajamas, hugged him on the bed, lay on his side, and stared at him like that. Some feel they are wrong. And some feel they are not entirely wrong. The complicated feeling in my heart is indescribable.